Hey guys, it's Richie the WizKid here from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and I'm here to talk to you about PopThreads.com, your number one source for finding awesome nerdy t-shirts. Are you sick from not knowing what to wear when you go out with all your friends on the weekends? Well, don't have a cow, man. Go to PopThreads.com, and if you use the code Simpsons at checkout, you can save 15% on all your t-shirt needs.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we're back for another Season 4 classic, just like they all have been so far. We're going to be talking about Duffless. And joining me, as always, a man who definitely is not Duffless, your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
Drunk. I'm just kidding. I wish. This one kind of feels like it hit home a little bit in some regards, but you know we're definitely going to get into that. I'll go ahead and send it back to you, the man, the myth, your old pal Mosey. It's Miles.
And you'll be back, and you'll be back, and you.
Of course I'll be back. If you didn't close, I'd never leave.
And we have officially just spoiled our own episode more than we ever have. That is as much jumping around as one can do in one episode.
In 15 seconds.
Yeah, and the only thing left to do is just start singing Raindrops Keep Dropping on My Head. That's really all there is.
You know, Miles, I think there's one thing that can make this a little bit better for us to start off with. I think we need a refreshment.
All right, I see where you're going with this. That better?
We can't get enough of that wonderful Duff. By the way, Duff Beer, you can sponsor us whenever you want to.
Any beer company can. We'll go ahead and edit this out and just put your name in anytime you're ready.
Can't get enough of that Wonder Pacifico.
Can't get enough of that wonderful
Mr. Black.
So let's go ahead and talk about Duffless, which debuted on February 18th, 1993.
Almost on my birthday.
Oh yeah, it's really close. You're right. It's almost gonna hit next week too, but it's gonna skip over just by a couple days.
Yep.
This episode's chalkboard gag is Goldfish Don't Bounce. And the couch gag we've seen before, but I really like it. I call it the Deadpool one, but that's just because I like Deadpool. But it's where the Simpsons family runs out of the actual frame, and you can see the edges of the film running by as they grip them to hold on and pull themselves back onto the couch.
Breaking the fourth wall.
Always. Love how this episode starts. We're at the Springfield School Science Fair. And, you know, Rich, for a school with no Asians, this science fair is going pretty well.
I think we put on a good science fair.
And Nick Krabappel agrees that it's pretty good. But just then, they see Bart Simpson's Go-Go Ray, which is a machine that shoots a laser that makes the person dance. And it's got many settings, like, for instance, the jerk, the monkey, the mashed potato, the swim, and the Freddy, which I knew all of those, except I don't know the Freddy, to be honest. I have no idea what that dance is.
I'm wondering how a 10-year-old knows what any of these dances are, or is capable of building a go-go ray that makes them dance like this. And why would Skinner talk like that? That doesn't sound like anything Skinner would ever say.
He gets hit and starts dancing, and I love the line. He's like, I'm disrupting the learning process, and I love it.
that also doesn't sound like Skinner. Something's a little off here, Miles.
And that's when we realize that it's all just a dream. Bart wakes up, and what's really funny is that in the dream, he was actually declared the first place winner, and as he wakes up, he realizes that Lisa's just sitting over Bart as he sleeps, saying over and over again, first prize, first prize, first prize. And when Bart wakes up and comes to, he's like, what are you doing? And she replies, just messing with your mind a little. Which is actually, I believe, a little bit of foreshadowing for the rest of this episode.
You could say so. Lisa's a little maniacal in this episode.
She is. She's very motivated by her awfully bratty brother. Marge wants to make sure that Lisa's getting enough support with her science fair project, so she asks Homer to help, and he replies, yep, syrup is better than jelly.
I mean, he's right.
Syrup is the bomb, dude.
Speaking from a diabetic perspective, syrup is the bomb.
Tick, tick. Well, Lisa shows off her science project at the breakfast table, and she's proud to say that she thinks it could actually solve world hunger. What she's done is she's grown a very, very giant tomato, and I love her little self-indulgent fantasy where it shows a family in a third world country where food seems to not be abundant, and they're slicing into one of Lisa's tomatoes and thanking her as her portrait sits over their dinner table.
Yes, because that's what everybody wants to eat for the rest of their lives, tomatoes.
Just giant slices of tomatoes.
I like the little snippet they talk about where they used anabolic steroids on the tomato. And Bart even references, like a lot of athletes do. And this is, you said 1993? This is right around that time, but before it was common knowledge even. But still, the Simpsons are ahead of the curve making those little jokes about it.
Also want to note that when asked about his science fair project, Bart pointed out that he's been testing the effects of cigarettes on dogs, and it shows Santa's little helper, choking up a lung.
But he's actually smoking the cigarette, too. I told you, Bart is a beastmaster. How do you get a dog to smoke a cigarette? How?
I knew this was coming. As soon as I saw this pop up on the screen, I was just like, oh god, here comes the beastmaster theory.
Prove me wrong in this scene. How did he get Santa's little helper to smoke?
This is a pretty damning bit of evidence you got here. I'll give you this one.
I made a note that I figured you'd actually really not like this moment.
Again, I'm totally weird, and I'm willing to admit that. There are certain scenes with dogs that just absolutely upset me. For whatever reason, a dog chain smoking doesn't bother me in the slightest.
That could be the worst thing of all.
Yeah, that's actually going to take him out far worse than anything else they've done to him.
At least in John Wick, the dog died quickly.
I don't know why my brain works the way it works. It just works. Arguably. Oh, well, we get, yet again, probably the best part of the episode, which features Homer arguing, or really in this point conspiring with his own brain, about how he's going to tell his family that he's just going to go work a standard 9 to 5 shift, but really, he's going to sneak out early and go tour the Duff brewery. Well, time to go to work.
Little do they know, I'm ducking out early to take the Duff brewery tour.
Roll in at 9, punch out at 5, that's the plan.
They don't suspect a thing. Well, off to the plant.
Then to the Duff brewery.
Uh-oh. Did I say that, or just think it?
I've got to think of a lie, fast.
Homer, are you going to the Duff brewery?
Ah!
That's probably my favorite part of this episode, and it's always something like this that makes the favorite part, but it's the whole oh no, I said the loud part soft and the soft part loud kind of thing.
Dude, they've even admitted on the director's commentary that part of the reason that they don't do this bit with Homer and his brain anymore is because they went to this well so much during this season, and they feel that they really used up the majority of great ideas really, really quickly because they like the bit so much, but it's every episode, this is always the highlight. It's always Homer talking to his brain is always our favorite part of the show, which this one is probably the best one yet.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to pay attention, and it's, again, as a kid you laugh, but as an adult you're just oh my god. Love me some Hoju brain.
Homer is actually at work, but he's planning on ducking out early. He's even got a little map to help him out that says, if the plant ye wish to flee, ye must go to Sector 7B. Which he does find, and it's a decrepit old hallway where he finds, among other things, a skeleton from, I guess, somebody else who tried to flee work early. And he encounters a giant spider, to which there's also a clue to defeat on that map. This time, to overcome the spider's curse, simply quote a Bible verse.
Screw it.
He tries to come up with, he's like, thou shalt not, screw it, and he just throws a rock at it.
He hits it right in the head,
it
too,
works.
And knocks it up.
Yeah. Who needs the Bible when you've got an arm like that? So he's made it to his escape route, and he's got his accomplice Barney waiting in his vehicle with a mattress tied to the roof to help pad Homer's fall from whatever story he's jumping from. But just as Homer jumps, Barney sees what he thinks is Princess Di. He pulls forward just a couple of feet, which is all that was needed to make Homer miss. And just then, Barney realizes, oh, it was just a pile of rags.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to lie, I thought they were going to take this joke one bit farther and that Barney was going to back up again and actually run over Homer a second time.
He's unbreakable.
They didn't go that route. I remembered that happening, or at least I painted that picture in my mind.
Double tap.
Back at school, Lisa and Bart are leaving together, but Lisa forgot her math book, and she asked Bart to hold her science fair project, which of course is a giant tomato. And lo and behold, Principal Skinner has to tie his shoe just at that moment. Once again, a scene reminding me of the Sega game Virtual Bart,
yes.
which is actually probably my favorite of the mini games, was where you're throwing tomatoes at the school during class picture day. If you recall, Principal Skinner was one of the characters you could hit, but you could only hit him when he was bent over, and his butt would actually shake at you just like this, which, why does he twerk when he ties his shoes, by the way?
And something should be said about a grown adult male in a position of power over a bunch of kids doing something like this. Completely inappropriate.
Regardless, Bart cannot resist the target, and he takes this giant tomato he's been armed with by his sister,
pumped full of steroids,
and lets it loose on his principal. And it's actually kind of reminiscent of the Vietnam flashback scene we saw, where he's kind of seemingly having like a bombing flashback, because it comes in real slow motion. The shadow slowly overtakes him, and then it splatters all over his backside.
And it does that like war scene thing too, where like you see the blood splattering all over people nearby, but
it's the tomato in this case. But yeah, totally. The downside of this epic prank that Bart had on his principal is that Lisa no longer has a science fair project, and she's quite upset about it, and she's venting to her mom at the kitchen table about how her brother ruined it.
Let's be honest here, though. When you take your science fair project to school, doesn't it have somewhere where you go set it up immediately? Like, Lisa could have gone to the gymnasium or wherever the setup is, set her tomato down, and then gone in and gotten her math book. Like, of all the places to leave your science fair project when it's a giant tomato, why do you give it to Bart? Not
the smartest thing Lisa's ever done. And to your point, why is she taking it back and forth from school anyway? At this point, it's already a grown-ass giant tomato. If you don't need that bitch for 3 more days, then don't take it to school for 3 more days, or take it to school and leave it there. But don't take it back
leave it in the science lab or wherever it's got to be.
Yeah. So I'm with you, but we'll just call that a little bit of forced plot narrative. All right, we'll let it slide on this one.
Let it slide, let it slide.
It'll slide right down like a nice, ice-cold, refreshing Duff beer, and Homer is excited to be at the Duff Brewery tour. There's a representative from Duff who comes out and says, I'm sure all of you heard about the strychnine rumors that were going on, and everyone's like, strychnine? No, I had no idea what you're talking about. Really? It was on CNN.
Huh?
Well, none of it's true. Which made me laugh because, again, Simpsons did it. This is fake news before fake news was a thing.
They had a lot of little interesting commercials, too, during the tour that I liked.
The first ones were a few that they passed, and one of just the posters I liked was, I knew he was a commie because he wasn't drinking Duff.
Commie bastards.
Hitting way too close to the things that are going on in America today, actually. And then the commercials from, I believe, the 60s are also quite entertaining.
Well, they do that little bit with Nixon and JFK where they're having, like, a debate, and then they break for a commercial, and JFK's like, that's a good, refreshing Duff.
Yes, I also support whatever brand he's referring to.
Which, the thing I thought was interesting is, I don't know what all you know about the 1960 presidential election and the debate that happened with Nixon and JFK.
First televised one, I believe, which made a strong reason why JFK was actually nominated, from what I understand.
That is true, but like the funny thing about it was all on appearance only, and this commercial really makes fun of it without ever saying anything about it, but you just have to know your history, because they make the JFK character look so charming and awesome and with the big smile, and Nixon looks terrible, which is what happened in real life. Everyone that watched the televised version of the debate thought JFK won, and it was all on appearance. Where everyone that listened on the radio and actually listened to the points being made said that Nixon won because he actually knew what he was talking about. But because Nixon looked so flabbergasted on actual television, people were like, oh, JFK totally won that, when he didn't really say anything to win.
That's interesting, and I do know from the commentary that some of the lines from the speech they used in this commercial were actually verbatim from Nixon's debate speech against Kennedy.
That makes a lot of sense. They would do their research before doing that, so...
Of course they would. They also had the classic Duff recommended by doctors commercial, which is just hilarious because that's reminiscent of real life alcohol and cigarette commercials that it used to be like, doctors always recommend Marlboro. It'll give you that nice can't breathe feeling in the morning.
Emphysema.
Along the tour, they get to see where the Duff is made, and they've got 3 exciting flavors, Rich. They've got Duff Light, and Duff Dry. And I absolutely love this shot because they pan out the camera slightly to show that all of the beer is coming from the same place and it's just being split into 3 right before it goes into the respective canisters.
The good, smooth Duff Dry.
The tour is coming to the end, and the tour guy leaves it on a note of, like, what does the future have in store for Duff? Let's just say we've got a few good ideas up our sleeve.
Like what?
I'd rather not get into that right now.
Why not?
Look, we don't have any ideas for the future. Is that what you wanted to hear? Does that make you happy?
No.
So Homer kind of talks himself into the point he didn't want to hear, which is a bummer for him, of course. This is actually where we get back to Lisa and Marge. They kind of cut away for a bit to have the conversation where Lisa's upset about her science fair project, and Marge has a suggestion. Why doesn't she train a hamster to run a maze? And then Lisa has an amusing little daydream where there's a hamster in a maze, but it has Bart's head on it, and he gets stuck, and she just starts maniacally laughing, and when Marge asks what's so funny, she's like, oh, it's just something I saw on Herman's head. Marge just kind of groans at this, but doesn't quite believe her. Fun little fact about this sequence, Herman's Head was a show in which Yeardley Smith, who of course voices Lisa Simpson, played the character Louise. So it's a little nod to her former job.
Look at that. Clever, clever girl.
Indeed. So back at the Duff Brewery tour, we're going to meet the most important man in the entire company, Rich. The guy who's in charge of quality control. And we see a conveyor belt of Duff beer bottles going by, and he's just pointing at each one, saying things like, fine, fine, mouse, fine, rat, fine, fine, syringe, fine, nose. It goes on for a while, and Barney comes up to him and compliments him on what a wonderful job he's doing. And while he's saying, wow, thank you, that really makes this all worth it, he misses several not quality controlled bottles of beer that included things like rats, syringes, and even a glass jar with Hitler's head came by.
Well, you know, it gives it that extra Duff taste. Or doof.
So on the doof indeed. On the director's commentary, they specifically said that they would not name this beer company, and they want to make it clear that the company that they are talking about are not pro-Nazi. But at the time that this aired, there was a beer company that got very, very angry with the Simpsons that did advertise not during the Simpsons, but on the Fox network, and they even threatened to pool their advertising. They thought the Hitler head was a direct dig at their company, and it implied that they were pro-Nazi. I believe it was David Stern who recalls taking a phone call from the office that one day, and it was actually somebody from that company. The representative for the company told him that they were offended and that the president of their company was considered a hero in World War II, and he just remembers saying, by the Germans?
Oh, God.
Which pissed them off, quite frankly, and caused quite a bit of scandal, enough so that they were not willing to say the company's name to this day.
Wow.
Bravo.
That sounds like something we would say.
We did grow up on The Simpsons. I mean, they absolutely
gosh.
sculpted our sense of humor, so I could easily see either one of us saying something like this. And not having the control to bite our tongue either. That always gets me in trouble a lot.
Oh, that's too perfect.
Homer and Barney are wrapping up their tour. They're at the point where they get to try some samples, which Homer's eating a bunch of Duff gummy bears, which, they're fruit-colored, so I worry about the flavor on that. But the idea of alcoholic gummy bears are cool. I mean, it works in the pot industry.
But it's like beer-flavored gummies, though.
That's the issue. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's not like rum or vodka in there. It's fucking beer.
True story. Barney has just taken to laying under the Duff dark tap and drinking himself dumb. He's actually mad at Homer when Homer suggests he's had enough, because he's like, no, I still haven't tried the Duff raspberry. Or I think he said Duff brandy, but I couldn't quite make it out here on the second one. And lastly, they even have tartar control Duff now.
And then he falls off the table.
Homer refuses to let Barney drive, despite the fact that Barney is arguing with him. It gets to the point where Homer decides he's going to have to knock his friend out so that he won't drive himself home, which proves more difficult than he thought it would be. After several attempts at punching him in the face, hitting him over the head with a weapon, and even slamming Barney's head in the car door, Barney doesn't get knocked out, but he finally just caves and's like, fine, take my keys.
There's something right in this scene at the beginning when they're walking out to the car. They pass the Duff sign.
That sign is brilliant.
Yeah, it says, friends don't let friends drive drunk. We've all seen the sign, seen the commercials before. But then the sign changes over, and it's two friends sitting on the hood of their car drinking beer.
And it says it's never a bad time to have a Duff.
Yeah, there you go. And I really like the satire here, because I watch networks like ESPN that have beer advertisers on there all the time. And they're advocating don't drink and drive, but these companies, the beer companies, are paying so much money to advertise on these networks to get you to drink their product, and just by law they have to tell you not to drink and drive, and just the whole satire in this ad in the Simpsons episode from 1993 still proves pertinent even today, where it's just, it's crazy what these companies get away with doing, because it's just like cigarettes. They're selling them to kids, they're selling alcohol to me, and all this shit works, even though they're like, but do it responsibly.
But have a really good time and get super drunk responsibly.
Yeah. Women will like you if you drink our beer.
But honestly, this is less of an issue in today's world, just because Uber and Lyft and things like that have ultimately removed any excuses people have to drive drunk at this point. I don't want to go on a soapbox, but if you get a DWI in today's age, it's because you're kind of a fucking idiot, dude. You have so many options to get yourself out of that.
Or you have an idiot friend that rats you out to the police.
Because, unfortunately, this kind of happens to Barney and Homer. Homer trying to be the nice guy because he was the less drunk of the two. And oddly enough, he's actually far less drunk in this scene than he has been in several previous episodes where he drove drunk and was clearly more intoxicated than this.
I didn't even see him drink any beer besides eating the gummy bears.
I'm sure he had some samples, but he was obviously better to go than Barney was. Regardless, they wave to the mascot Biergstein on the way out of the Duff Brewery, and it turns out it's Chief Wiggum on a sting. Wiggum calls out over the police radio that there's a couple of drunks leaving the brewery, and a fleet of motorcycle cops pursue them. They make Homer pass a sobriety test, the classic saying the alphabet and walking on a straight line, and Homer's nailing it. If he is drunk, he is super functionally drunk, and he's killing it. They're actually about to let him go, and Barney calls out, make him do a breathalyzer, and he fails miserably. Why would you say that, even if you're super drunk? My God.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how the laws on this work. I've heard lots of different stories. I've heard the sobriety test is to establish probable cause, and that if you get pulled over and you have terrible balance, but you know you're not drunk, you can forgo the sobriety test and just tell them they'll give you the breathalyzer. But obviously, in this case, you wouldn't want to do that because Homer's going to blow over.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, Barney's a terrible friend here.
Pretty much.
I would never do that to you.
The only thing I can think of is maybe he's pissed because he just got beat up by Homer because he was trying to take his keys. But even
or because he really wanted to drive.
Or he was just so drunk he wasn't thinking straight is also highly likely. But it doesn't matter. It still sucks that he got called out like that. And worse, Wiggum goes over to Barney still dressed in his undercover Duff mascot outfit. And when he's asked Barney if he thinks he can get himself home safe, Barney actually replies, sure thing, giant glass of beer.
And isn't this a dirty trick by the Springfield Police Department? Like,
it's just wrong.
Just setting up right outside the Duff Brewery?
Just wrong. And then, of course, to put the little icing on the cake, Barney backs up and hits Police Chief Wiggum, and because he's dressed like a beer stein, he goes rolling down the highway and then down the hillside. At first, he was terrified and seemingly it hurt, but as he got further and further along, he just started being like, "Wee, this is a lot of fun!"
And because of the magic of a television show, he doesn't go after Barney, even though in real life it's a small town and he would know Barney by name.
Yeah, true. But I can't believe they'd let him go as obviously drunk as he was. But I guess maybe they weren't that far from Moe's and they thought he'd be safer there. Things are looking pretty grim for the Simpsons. Marge receives a phone call from Chief Wiggum that her husband was found DOA.
Oh my gosh.
Marge, of course, rightfully panics, thinking that her husband is dead on arrival. But Wiggum is like, oh God, no, I meant DWI. I always get those confused.
And then that lady walks up and said, "You said my husband was DWI?"
Go talk to that officer over there. I'm going to lunch.
Clancy.
Oh my goodness. Homer is in fact just in jail. He's not dead, and he's already being visited by his lawyer, Lionel Hutz, who has a foolproof scheme to get him off. It's going to be nothing but surprise witnesses, each witness more surprising than the next. And just then, it pans out again, another great shot where they use the camera angle. As they pan out, it reveals more of the situation, and we find out Lionel Hutz isn't Homer's lawyer. Lionel Hutz is actually in jail himself next to Homer, and he's just leaning through the bars to talk to him.
Like you said, a great shot right there. That looked awesome.
Homer goes before the judge, and he finds out that his license is going to be revoked, and he's going to have to go to alcohol education classes.
Can I get that last remark stricken from the record?
No, Mr. Simpson. And before we move on to revisit Lisa and her science fair project, we get a shot of, it's either Patty or Selma gloating as they get to stamp Homer's driver's license void, which of course gives them just that little bit of smugness that they like to have over Homer. Lisa is hard at work on her new science fair project. She goes off to the pet store. I love the name of the pet store too. It's a place called All Creatures Great and Cheap. She asks the clerk for their smartest hamster. The clerk reaches back behind the counter into a cage of hamsters and randomly pulls one out and is like, "This one's really smart. He writes novels in his free time under the name J.G. McGregor." Lisa, of course, starts to question how a hamster could possibly write novels, and he replies, "Well, he does the ending first and he works himself backwards." Lisa still isn't buying it, but he makes the sell when he says, "Just buy him before his mother eats him."
Yeah. Hamsters are weird creatures.
I actually had a pet hamster when I was a kid that really sucked, honestly. It was kind of the worst pet ever. But here's the thing, is I did not know at the time she was super bitchy and would bite me pretty much any time I tried to hold her. But it turned out she was pregnant. And after she had all her little pink babies, she was a lot cooler. She wouldn't bite me when I'd hold her, and she was a lot less irritable.
Just like real women.
And wow.
You heard it here from MrMostDaysOff.
There went our female audience. Thanks.
The 3 females that listen to us are now not going to anymore.
That's probably true. Thanks, Rich.
I'm a hit with the ladies.
Well, unfortunately, we did not keep those extra hamsters, and I do recall one day I had a soccer. It was it's kids, so I had some sort of sports game. It was either soccer or basketball, whatever I was off to play that day. And my dad was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take the hamsters back to the pet store, the babies, because we can't keep them all, so I'm just gonna return them." And I was like, "Oh, cool," and that made sense why he left behind us and showed up a little bit later. Well, I, of course, years later found out that he never returned them to the pet store. He was late because it took him a couple minutes to flush them down the toilet before he got on the road himself. So that was a traumatizing event to find out as a child.
I was going to say, like, how do you return hamsters to the store that weren't there to begin with?
Dude, I was in, like, 2nd grade. I totally would have... Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Where else would you take baby hamsters? I wouldn't think to flush them down the toilet.
But, so they were alive and he flushed them down the toilet?
I don't really know the grim details. I just know that I leave, there's a bunch of pink wiggly things in the bottom of the cage, and I come back and they're supposedly at the pet store.
That's like drowning them. Oh,
It's pretty fucking cruel. My dad's kind of a monster. Don't tell PETA.
Can they be our new sponsor?
You don't win friends with salad, Richie.
You don't win friends with salad. You don't win friends with salad.
So ahead of ourselves. Let's get back to this one. Homer is now feeling the repercussions from losing his driver's license, except it seems like he's about to drive to work. It shows him waving goodbye to Marge from seemingly the driver's seat of the car, but then he pulls out from behind the car and he's actually sitting on a little pink bike. I'm guessing it must be Lisa's, and he has to bike himself to work. Nelson rolls by at one point and does a wheelie as he does his classic, ha ha!
Then Homer makes the best of a bad situation.
Well, I love that he's starting to feel really depressed about the bike until he discovers that it does have a bell. So that's kind of cool.
He gets, like, overly happy about the bell, too.
Back home, Lisa's on the edge of a breakthrough when she discovers she's got a project in the works. Is my brother dumber than a hamster?
Yes, I can go ahead and tell her. He is.
She's going to set up a few scientific experiments to test her hypothesis. The first one, she actually creates a replication of their living room for the hamster and hides a food pellet on top of the bookshelf, and then is amazed when it uses its resources by moving the couch over to climb up and get the pellet. Which is pretty incredible considering how easily a hamster could just scale that bookshelf. But,
yeah.
You know, it does prove in the very next scene when Bart tries that very maneuver and the bookshelf ends up toppling over on top of him, crushing him and preventing him from getting the cupcake that Lisa used to lure him there.
To be fair, though, moving an actual couch as a human is a pretty hefty feat for a child.
I don't know. It would be doable as a 10-year-old. I made couch forts at that age, and we'd move our couches.
Yeah, but that Simpsons couch looks old, big, and heavy, though.
Fair enough. We won't go into the physics and proposed weight of the Simpsons house based on the animation. But,
well, if Lisa's using the scientific method, why can't we?
You know what, Rich? Being a scientist is being half B.F. Skinner and the other half P.T. Barnum, all right?
Excuse me, Batman's a scientist.
It's not Batman. The experiment continues. This time, Lisa connects food to a light electric shock, and the hamster very quickly learns to fear the hand of man. But Bart doesn't. He actually gets very, very Three Stooges here. He continues to grab the electrified cupcake over and over and over again. He starts saying things like, "Oh, a wise guy, eh?" And he gets very Three Stooges about it. Homer is doing everything he can to not think about alcohol, but he's at the science fair, and of all people, Ralph Wiggum's science project is really working him over, because Ralph somehow invented a car that runs on alcohol that causes Homer to have a fantasy in which he thinks about a world in which he could be pumping gasohol, one for his car, one for him, one for his car, one for him. Which is a horrifying thing to think about, putting all these drunk people on the road every time they gas up.
Literally, he's supposed to be learning how not to drink and drive, and is fantasizing about drinking and driving.
He also has to attend mandatory alcohol education classes, and the first one, he's being lectured by Wiggum, who's going to show a video to show just how awful drinking and driving really is. But they accidentally start playing a home video of Wiggum laying out by the pool in his backyard.
And it looks like he's got a gun in his hand, and it's just the water hose that he squirts his wife with.
Oh, this is going to be great. And it shows him, spraying his wife, who's bringing a tray of food out for him poolside. And he just, hoses her down. And it's one of those classic pranks where he's the only one laughing, and everyone else just thinks he's an ass. Clancy. They're going to watch a video hosted by none other than Troy McClure. It's going to be deadly car crashes, except instead of making it all grim and terrifying, they set it to comedy slapstick style Benny Hill type music, And it's the type of thing you'd hear if you're watching, like, on TV, the world's worst car crashes, and it's set to humor. It's a terrible joke, but very funny, because everybody in the room is absolutely mortified, except for Homer, who thinks it's hilarious. Troy McClure comes in with a guy saying, "This guy looks appealing. In fact, they're appealing him off the pavement right now." And Homer starts cracking up. It's funny because I don't know him.
Yeah. There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that.
That's pretty grim, dude. I mean, I think just human compassion in general is going to make you feel a little bit bad for somebody who's literally being
when the video's purposely portraying
it
that way. Like, the video's making you laugh. They made it in a funny way. So, like, what... They're invoking a response by the way the sound is. That's the point of film sound.
I'll give you this isn't quite Faces of Death, but it's somewhere between Faces of Death and like the world's worst football bloopers or something like that. Because it's pretty bad from what it sounds like from we're seeing the reactions. I mean, hell, one of the residents of Springfield taking this class almost puked.
Well, I mean, did you hear about the other films that Troy does? Hi, I'm actor Troy McClure. You might remember me from such driver's ed films as Alice's Adventures Through the Windshield Glass and The Decapitation of Larry Leadfoot. Like, come on.
Oh, that's funny.
And we learned an important thing in the scene after the video was over, too, which caught me by surprise. I forgot about this.
What was that?
Hans Moleman is only 31 years old.
Dude, I love this whole setup when they're introducing themselves. It actually starts with Jasper coming in the building, and Reverend Lovejoy is like, "Are you here for coping with senility?" "No, damn it, I'm here for microwave cooking." "Oh, wait, no, I'm here for coping with senility." My personal favorite, I like the Hans Moleman one too, but my personal favorite is actually Flanders, who's talking about his first and last time experiencing blackberry schnapps. He called somebody a bitter old biddy, and Maud was absolutely appalled, and he was embarrassed. In fact, he felt that night he was more animal than man.
Freaking Flanders.
Which, the heavy metal band Oakley Dokley, who are fucking great, by the way, shout out to all those guys, they're awesome. They actually have a song entirely written about this exact line. Where it's called I Was More Animal Than Man, and it's a great song on a really great album, so check those guys out. They're awesome. Also awesome, Otto, who likes to get blotto. And then we discover the tragic tale of Hans Moleman, who alcohol has ruined his life. He's only 31 years old, which is how old we are. Let's suck it up.
I'm actually older than that by...
Oh yeah, you just turned 32 not that long ago.
Yeah. Take a look at yourself in the mirror, you dumb slut kind of moment right there.
When Homer's asked why he's there, he says that it's because the court made him.
Well, Homer, we'll help you never drink a beer again.
Ah! And he literally like screams and runs and dives out of the glass window. But when he gets back home, he's in the bedroom with Marge, and Marge is actually quite concerned. He brought home some literature from the meeting, and she starts going through all the checklists and asks Homer things like, "Homer, do you ever drink when you're alone?"
Does the Lord count as a person?
No.
Then yes.
Do you need to drink a beer before bed?
That would be nice, thank you.
Do you hide beer around the house?
Do I ever? And then isn't he like reaching behind the toilet or like in the...
He's hiding him in the top tank of the toilets, which is fucking like red flag central if for someone who needs an intervention. And lastly, she asked, "Do you ever drink to escape reality?" But Homer doesn't seem to hear her because he's too busy looking in the mirror, where in his reflection he sees a muscle-bound version of himself who's popping his pecs back and forth like The Rock.
Always do the peg pop.
All of these things combined show Marge that her husband really might have a problem, and she's quite concerned. So, she asked her husband a personal favor. She wants him to give up drinking for a full month.
No problem. No deer for a month.
Did you say beer or deer?
Deer.
Homer.
Okay, starting tomorrow, no more beer.
And then I love you hear a can opening sound, and Marge is like, "What was that sound?" And Homer replies, that was just me saying, "Psh, I love you."
Yeah, the lights are off, but yeah, you hear him open a beer. And I gotta say, I found this, like, we always have such weird timing on these episodes. And I'm not saying that I have a problem with alcohol, but I recently
Intervention! Intervention!
Literally a little over 2 weeks ago, I just decided that I was gonna not drink for a month. And I'm literally in the middle of that right now. And it's so weird that it just happens when we're doing this episode, because I didn't know this episode was coming up, and it's weird how all this stuff always seems to line up with us in some way or fashion. Or it could just be that The Simpsons are relatable in so many different ways. I mean, alcohol is a problem for almost every single person at some point in their life. And again, I'm not saying I have a problem. I just decided that it's time for me to take a little bit of a break.
Well, let me ask you, have you been losing weight?
I haven't checked, but I have been told, even a few days after I stopped drinking, when I went the first weekend without drinking on the weekend, one of my bosses was like, "Your face looks thin." And I go, "It's probably because I haven't had a drink in a few days."
Well, have you stopped sweating when you eat? I love that little bit at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, Homer decides that he's actually going to commit to this 30 days, and I'm sure it's going to go super easy and no problem for him. But we're not going to find out just yet, because first we are going to see some of the effects that this psychological torment that Bart has been going through has had. And we get a great movie spoof moment when Marge asks Bart to go get the cupcakes. We get a shot where he's reaching up towards the counter for them, and it's a exact replica, shot-for-shot replica of the scene from A Clockwork Orange, where the main character is reaching up for a woman's breast.
With the cherries on top and everything.
But he has a freak out, and yeah, the whipped cream and cherry nipples, it's perfectly shot. It's actually quite funny, but Bart is just completely losing it over these cupcakes that he has been trained now to fear. During this whole thing, Homer comes in the kitchen, and he gets his beer out of the fridge, and this part makes me sad, because he starts dumping the beer in the sink, and it just makes me think, why? Like, I get if you have, like, an issue where you can't control yourself, that you don't want to have it in your house, but fuck, man, you've got friends that drink that aren't trying to quit. Go save Barney a few bucks at the bar. Give him your old six-packs you don't want. Don't
fuck Barney right now. Fuck Barney.
Well, that's true. He did just
give him the breathalyzer. Yeah, no.
What about that guy down at the bar that calls him Bill?
But Homer knows if he goes to Moe's, he's going to drink. Let's be honest. Like, get it all out of there. And again, he's got the power of Marge behind him, and that woman makes Homer do things that he doesn't think he can do. So, like, he's doing this for her.
Well, the upside of this whole situation is that we get a very good song.
When I was 17, I drank some very good beer.
I drank some very good beer I purchased with a fake ID.
My name was Brian McGee.
I stayed up listening to Queen when I was 17. It's actually kind of a sweet moment there when Homer is reminiscing, because we're seeing these flashbacks in his head of his experience through the years with beer and how important it's been in his life. So the song was actually oddly charming and sweet in a weird way.
And that's the way, like, my dad used to tell me all the time about how he used to get beer when he was underage, because our family can grow facial hair like nobody's business. So he used to have, like, a full-grown beard when he was 17, going in and not even getting ID'd. And that stuff doesn't happen anymore. You can't really do that anymore. But with our parents' generation, definitely, I know a lot of people that say they used to go in and get beer when they weren't supposed to be able to.
I bought liquor a few times in college when I was underage, but I didn't have a fake ID. I honestly just had some huevos, and I walked in with my student, or as an idiot, you can think of it either way, really, but I walked in with nothing but my student ID intentionally, and at the time I had some piercings and whatnot. My eyebrow was pierced, and essentially I just go in on bullshitting, and the guy clearly knew what I was trying to do, but he's like, "Oh, I see you've got your eyebrow pierced. They don't let you do that till you're 21, right?" And I was like, of course they don't let you do that till you're 21. That's absolutely the hard rule. So I was allowed to buy some liquor a couple of times from that specific clerk. But I think it was more of a nod and a wink than anything. I don't really feel like I was pulling a fast one on anybody.
I was going to say, I'm not saying that, our generation didn't do stuff like this.
It was way easier in our parents' generation.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, totally.
I know somebody that was 20 years old that won a beer pong tournament while drinking beer in a bar.
And my prize was a bar tab.
And the prize was the bar tab. And some drunk asshole tore off a volleyball poster and hung it under a dumpster, to which I drove the getaway car to go get that. And we still have that poster to this day.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I forgot I was 20 when I won that.
I didn't say it was you. I'm not trying to implicate you in anything.
I think I'm past the statute of limitations on that. It's probably fine. That bar got closed down for serving underage people anyway.
Yeah, they did. You probably were like in some court video somewhere.
I probably was. I'm surprised I didn't get subpoenaed. They probably settled out of court.
This guy has X's on his hands when he goes in the restroom, and when he comes out, they're not on there anymore. Are you really that stupid? Not you, them, the bar.
I got what you meant. It's all good. Oh, good times. Was not Duffless that night. So, back at the Simpsons home, Bart finds Lisa's project, which is titled, Is My Brother Dumber Than a Hamster? So, of course, he's not exactly thrilled about this discovery, and he declares he is going to crush his sister just like this pellet. To which he keeps grabbing the electrified pellet that Lisa was using on the hamster in the second test. But again, he just keeps doing it over and over and over again. Very Three Stooges-like.
Which very Goldfish-like, too, just forgetting things as soon as they happen, which is funny because that was the chalkboard gag.
That's a very interesting tie-in, yeah. To get revenge, Bart hides her report, and it's like the day before the science fair at this point, so she's freaking out. Bart sits there in the chair and is like, I'll give you your report back, but you're going to have to solve a series of puzzles. And just then, Lisa comes back.
Found it! And Bart was doing like the evil lair boss with like the cat on the side of the armchair where he's petting it, but it's the hamster.
Yeah, that's right. He was trying to be very evil. So it is the day of the science fair, and we're seeing a little bit of the competition. Milhouse has made a demonstration on gravity using a slinky. It's basically just a slinky on an inclined plane.
And it only slinks once, and then it stops.
Yeah. Poor Milhouse. There's a father and son I did not recognize either, and I don't think they're repeat Simpsons characters, but they made a volcano, and the kid is like, can I see it? Can I touch it? And the dad's like, I worked far too hard on this for you to mess it up now.
You almost said, fuck it up.
I did. I was trying to be true to the quote. But he sends his kid away to go away from the science fair project. He's like, but my name's on it.
My name's on it, yeah.
Martin, in true Martin fashion, has gone way over the top. He's recreated a hot air balloon, and he's in character as he's recreating the Around the World in 80 Days. Unfortunately, though, his neighboring science fair project was Nelson Muntz, who was doing a demonstration on wasting squirrels with BB guns. So he shot Martin's hot air balloon, which deflated, and the line he says here, once again, pretty dark for a cartoon show. Nelson says, dang, I was aiming for his head.
Yeah, I wrote down, this is very, very dark. I mean, you laugh when you hear it, but when you actually think about it, again, as we've talked about numerous times in the past, seeing these things as adults, especially in today's society, which changes your viewpoint a little bit, is like, wow, that's pretty fucked up.
I know we talked a little bit about this earlier. That's totally my bad. I went out of order. But this is where we see Homer at Ralph, of all people's science fair displays, has created an alcohol-fueled car that causes Homer to have a fantasy about gasohol, which again creates this horrifying world in which there'd be so many people drinking and driving all the time.
Speaking of drinking, we apologize for the out of orderness. MrMostDaysOff and I have had too much Duff during this broadcast. Can't get enough of that refreshing Duff.
And finally, we get to Lisa's science fair project. She is setting up with Marge, who is concerned at the idea of Lisa using her brother in a psychological experiment. But Lisa assures her that it's all purely just for science. But then in her head, she has a moment very much like her dad, where she's talking to her brain.
That'll learn him to bust my tomato. Which this almost took over for my favorite line of the episode here, over the moment with Homer's brain earlier, because I just thought this was very out of character, but hilarious for Lisa.
It was a really good line. She just got oddly country with it. Lisa's very proud of her experiment, and she thinks she's got a shot to win. But just then, we see Bart the true showman he is, has the miracle of science on display. And his science fair project is, can a hamster fly an airplane? And all it is the hamster sitting in the cockpit of a toy airplane, but all the judges are just enamored with the idea that they've got tiny little goggles on him, and they even made a cute little scarf around his neck. This has no scientific merit!
Oh, it has all the scientific merit.
This is where we get that great line from Skinner, who comes up to Lisa and says, Lisa, every great scientist is half B.F. Skinner and half P.T. Barnum. I don't even need to see any of the other exhibits. This gets the first prize, which, again, this whole episode had this weird little wraparound in the B-plot because it all started with Bart winning first prize in his dream and Lisa fucking with his mind. And throughout the episode, Lisa's project was to mess with Bart's mind, and it turned out it caused him to win first prize at the science fair. Very weird little arc.
Lisa incepted her brother. She's the one that said first prize, which made his dream say first prize, and she inadvertently caused her own downfall by doing that to Bart. By playing that prank on Bart at the beginning, she caused herself to lose in the end.
Very strange little bit here, but it was Simpsons did it before Inception did. I totally agree with you.
And the thing I liked about it is that Bart's always all or none. He's always going to be a showman, or he's going to do absolutely nothing. It's one or the other. So he does the showman bit here, and it pays off.
He did get that pinstripe suit on awfully short notice, though. So that pretty much resolves the B-plot, but we've barely gotten into the main plot. It's kind of a little bit out of the normal structure for how the episodes have been lately, but it still holds true to The Simpsons. We see Homer is on day 1 of his 30-day journey to make it through the month without beer, but it's probably not going to be easy. We see Homer watching on TV a protest at the McMahon and Tate law firm, which is actually from the show Bewitched. That's the law firm that Darren Tate worked at. Little fun fact.
But isn't that where Homer went and punched the advertising guy in the face in a few episodes prior?
If it was, I didn't catch that part, but it was stated in the commentary this is a reference to Bewitched. I did not catch that in the last time that they had him go and punch that guy out. It could have been. Regardless, he sees these feminists protesting, but it turns out it's a beer commercial, and when 2 guys show up and start spraying down these feminists with Duff beer, they turn into wild party chicks.
They had protesting signs that were like protesting something, but the signs changed after this. One of them said, "I'm easy."
Yeah. They're all like scantily clad. They went from being fully covered and professionally dressed to being scantily clad and jumping around like bimbos. It's honestly, the funny and not so funny, not funny, I don't know. It's funny, but it's fucked up at the same time.
It hits too close to home.
Is that there's commercials out there that very much plant these types of things in a young man's mind. A young man like myself as a child growing up who probably at some point in his life had anticipations for college being a lot more like a beer commercial than it really was.
I don't know. Our short-term college life was like a beer commercial.
True. We made the best out of that beer commercial, didn't we? That's about as long as we were there for about the length of a beer commercial, but it was a hell of a ride. In addition to beer commercials being ruined, Homer goes to a baseball game with Barney and discovers that, damn, this sport is boring. And I really love the animation here because literally everybody surrounding Homer is drinking a beer other than him. And they're all somewhat into it, but like nothing is happening. They're like changing pitchers and calling in substitutions. Homer just can't take it. His exact line is, "I've never realized how boring baseball is."
Which I disagree with that part of it, but I really like the shot, like you said, where you can see red plastic cups or bottles on everyone's person except for Homer. You'll have to pay attention or you won't even notice what's going on.
Totally. It's a great little shot. We also see that Homer's losing weight, and Marge compliments him and says he's never looked better. And as he's walking to bed, his pajama pants actually fall off, so he's just left in his whitey-tighties. Probably the worst one is Homer has to sit through one of Patty and Selma's Tupperware parties. The only good thing about this is we get a return of the fan-favorite character Jub Jub from Selma's Choice.
Fan favorite or Conan O'Brien favorite?
Conan O'Brien favorite. To be fair, they said they actually tried to bring Jub Jub back a few times later on, and half of the staff was just like, who is this iguana? Which is kind of sad. Do your goddamn homework.
Yeah.
But, so that character is lost to the ages, but I was glad to see that they were at least trying to have a little bit of continuity with it. During this Tupperware party, though, Homer gets to a true low point, because inside his brain we hear him say, I would kill everyone in this room for one drop of beer. Which is pretty fucking extreme, but I believe him.
But when two of the people are Patty and Selma, that's not that much of a stretch.
Finally, he's at counseling again, at his court-mandated counseling, and he's told that he's in a safe place, that this isn't a room of judgment, and he can say whatever he's feeling. So he lets them know that the other day he was so desperate for a beer that he went to the football stadium and started sucking the dirt under the bleachers, which is... Ugh.
Get out!
Poor Homer, that's fucked up, man. No judgment here, get out! And he does, he leaves, but Homer can't escape beer. It's everywhere. He's riding his bike, he sees it on a billboard. He turns away from the billboard, he almost gets hit by a train. That for whatever reason, every single train has a Duff billboard sign on the side of it.
Yeah, it's a Duff train. It has to be a Duff train.
The funniest of all is he actually falls off his bike and is laying down in the ground, looking up in the sky, just trying not to see Duff, and there's a fucking Duff blimp that has the word surrender to Duff, and then, as if they're targeting him specifically, they drop a, 12-pack of beer bottles that are all attached to parachutes, and it's like out in the middle of this random field. Homer's the only one there, and it's like they're bombing him with beer.
Best blimp ever. But you forgot that when Homer's bike falls, he actually runs over a old can of Duff beer on the ground, and that's what makes him fall off.
That's right, it's the Duff litter, so he really can't escape it anywhere.
Yeah, and this is the only, problem, if you can have a problem with the episode I have, because they make it seem like it's going to be really, really tough, and then all of a sudden, he's on the last day of the month.
Yeah, I was going to wait till the end, but we can talk about that a little bit. We're getting really, really close to the Simpsons reset, and I mentioned the structure of this episode a little bit earlier, and I like it overall, and in fact, the first 2/3 of this episode are hilarious. I mean, really, really funny shit going on in this show. But the Simpsons reset on this one just comes so fast and suddenly. And according to the commentary, this was in response to fans not liking the way that they were ending a couple of the episodes where they felt there was just too much fluff at the end. And they like these quick resolutions. But personally, I like to have the resolution come a little less suddenly. I don't like how out of nowhere it almost came. Because like you said, the next thing we know, Homer is crossing day 30 off of his calendar and telling Marge...
With his hand shaking.
Yeah, he's like Jones in hardcore.
I'm going to Moe's. Send the kids to the neighbors, I'm coming home loaded.
And this is when Marge is like, you don't have to start drinking again right away just because it's been 30 days. I mean, after all, you look better, you don't sweat when you eat anymore, and you've saved $100 last month. I just found it in your pants pocket. Yoink! And he grabs it out of her hands and runs to the bar.
That'll be gone in about 5 drinks.
He's not greeted very warmly at his pub either, because Moe is like, oh, look, it's Mr. I don't need alcohol to enjoy life. And he calls out to all the barflies, we don't like his type here, do we? And all the people at the bar who look like more miserable than they ever have before. They're drawn very, very dark, and they all just kind of mumble, When Homer responds, Moe, give me a beer, Moe's like warms up all of a sudden. He's like, hey, everybody, Homer's back. But the bar patrons all reply in the exact same way, yeah. So it's really painting a very, very negative light on alcohol. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing, because alcohol can be a lot of fun. But simply put, you can get to a place where this could become your life very, very quickly. And you don't want to let it overcome you. Just like any habit you have, you don't want it to take control. It's the key to life, man.
And honestly, I really like the way they do this shot here, where it's Homer's got the beer in his hand, and he's looking around at all the barflies and seeing what he once was and what he doesn't have to be. And it's something, I mean, again, I can draw from personal experience. There's a local bar that I go to pretty frequently, and I was up there last weekend with one of my friends, but I wasn't drinking, but he wanted to go, so I went with him. And you see, like, the old crowd, the older people that are there all the time, at the end of every night, and they don't look happy.
They just look drunk. They don't look happy.
Yeah, they don't necessarily look sad, but they do look kind of like morose and upset, but not sad, if that makes sense. The way the Simpsons animated it was perfect.
That was great. It made the message very clear, and it painted a very, very good picture. I love that part of the ending. It's just the suddenness of this next part that is a little jarring, because Homer declares, "Put this one in the fridge, Mo. I've got a date with my wife." Mo instantly turns on him again. "Oh, you'll be back. And you'll be back." And I love this. He actually looks into the camera. This is actually a reference to the movie Reefer Madness, which I love. And he points directly at the camera and says, "And you'll be back." But when it pans out again, another time that they use this camera trick, we pan out and we see he's actually pointing at Barney, who replies, "Of course I'll be back, Mo. If you didn't close, I'd never leave."
Which, just like the Simpsons tied around, that ties us around to the top of our podcast.
Yeah, well, that's just because we went way out of order early on, but yeah. we do see Homer on his date with his wife, Marge. She's actually sitting on the handlebars of his pink bike as he rides into the sunset, and the song "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head" plays into the credits. And this ending is actually a direct reference to the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, though I'm pretty sure in that movie they ride out on horseback, not on a pink bicycle. I can't remember. It's been a while.
I don't know. We're going to have to rewatch that just to clarify.
But that does conclude the episode Duffless, a strong message in an old TV show that still rings true to this day. Was there anything that you or that book of yours wanted to point out on this one before we get out of here?
My book, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, pointed out two things we didn't touch on. When the judge has Homer's ID in the courtroom, it says the stuff we'll come to know about Homer. He's 6 feet tall, 240 pounds, has blue eyes and no hair. Date of birth, 05-12-56. That's just in this episode, which means he was born in 1955.
Wow.
One of the signs at the Duff Brewery was a Prohibition-era sign that says, "Prohibition got you down? Drink Dr. Duff's health tonic." Which I like that. But just on a personal note, like I said earlier, this episode kind of hit home a little bit for me, just in what I've been going through by my own doing the last few weeks, and I really like the struggles that Homer went through in this, because the first week that I decided I was taking a break from drinking, there's times where I'm like, man, I really want to drink right now, but when you actually stop and think about it, at least me personally, I'm like, you don't really need it. You just want it. And once you get that through your head, like, it's so easy to go without it. Like, I've been around people numerous times in the last 2 weeks, and everyone's like, why aren't you drinking? Drink. And I'm just like, I really don't need to. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But it's funny to see Homer going through these things where, like, he absolutely thinks he needs it. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it's been a month, and he hasn't done it. And his hands are shaking, and I hope mine aren't shaking at the end of the month. Because I don't have it as bad as Homer does, but it's funny the tricks that your mind can play on you. And to anybody out there going through a struggle, I'm not trying to make light of trying to overcome something like alcohol or overcome anything. I'm just talking about my personal experience over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, totally. Addiction is a very, very real thing. And while we're joking and having fun with this episode, I mean, we don't want to make light of anyone who's struggled with that, because it's absolutely something that can very negatively affect many people's lives, and something that's very, very difficult for people to overcome. So, I mean, definitely not throwing fun at that at all, but there are some good jokes in this episode. It's yet another time, and this time in a very different way, where the Simpsons take something that's actually pretty fucking serious, and they treat it in a manner that is still respected, but at the same time, they make it very, very funny. Like, I don't think that this is the type of humor that is going to offend a recovering alcoholic in any way. I think it's more so, not that you're a recovering alcoholic, but just like how you have pointed out, you can see the correlations to real life, and they do a damn good job of connecting. It's that trifecta where they hit you everywhere. In this case, the humor and the heart and the realness of how real life a yellow family can be is quite funny.
Yeah.
Just to go out on a slightly lighter note, because I thought this was a really fun story, and I don't want to go out on a downer. I believe it was David Stern on the commentary was talking about when he actually came up with the idea for this episode. He was doodling Homer with a can of beer, and he went to erase the can of beer to redraw it, And as he was erasing the can of beer, he thought, that would be interesting to see Homer go without beer for a month. Fun little fact on how this idea came to be, simply just a creator of The Simpsons having fun with their own creation and sparked a pretty good little story.
It's funny how some ideas just hit you like that.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of times the best ideas come out of those situations where if you try too hard to come up with a good idea, they won't come. It's when you're just kind of screwing around the genius flows. But that's going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Richie, what do you want to plug before we head out?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at theWiz_Kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. And I mentioned this last week, but I want to mention it one more time. We guest hosted an episode of Secret Transmissions podcast. That's at Secret Transpod on Twitter. So make sure you guys go and listen to that. We did the episode that debuted on August 18th. It's a lot of fun, and I think you guys will like hearing us do something different besides The Simpsons. And then it'll make you miss The Simpsons, so you come back next week and listen to us again as well.
And of course, you can keep up with everything Best Darn Diddly at bestdarndiddly.com. We're also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Pod Paradise. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're there. And if we're not, please tweet at me and let me know. Email me, let me know, so that I can get that fixed, and we'll get it up on whatever network you like listening to your podcast on.
Where do they find you on Twitter?
And if you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at MrMostDaysOff. That works everywhere online. Other than that, we just want to thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. The WizKid and I look forward to being back with you next week for our review of Last Exit to Springfield.
And while you're out there today, make sure you don't bust your tomatoes.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Every year, new TV shows get canceled. Some make it an entire season, and some don't even make it that far. I'm Ed, host of Unaired, where each week we review a show that was canceled with episodes left unaired, then pitch our ideas for what could have been future episodes of those shows. We've covered shows like Cavemen, the show based on the Geico Cavemen commercials, the ill-fated 2011 Wonder Woman pilot, a show called Look Well, where Adam West plays an aging TV detective who thinks he can solve real crimes, and many more. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, unairedpodcast.com, or wherever you download podcasts. And remember, some things are better left unaired.